A suffocating August morning in 1929 shattered the silence of an elegant Mexico City mansion with sharp, violent gunshots. When Doña Rosario, the housekeeper, entered, she found a scene that stopped her breath. A man lay motionless on a sofa. Next to him, kneeling, her dress stained with blood, was the woman once crowned the country's greatest beauty just a year before. Her vacant eyes stared into space as her hands clung desperately to the lifeless body. Mexico City dazzled with the glow of budding modernity, but hid shadows and dark secrets beneath its surface. A nation struggling to forget its wounds bore witness to how a promise of love turned into a cruel deception. How betrayal dragged even the purest soul into absolute darkness. What could have led this shining star to such a tragic fate? What hidden forces tore apart this fragile dream? At the end of the 1920s, Mexico City was a city of stark contrasts. The colonial past clung stubbornly to stone facades, while bold Art Deco flourished in new buildings. Wooden streetcars creaked alongside freshly arrived Ford automobiles. The distant echo of mariachi music mixed with jazz melodies escaping from dance halls. The scent of street food mingled with gasoline fumes and tobacco smoke in a city searching for its new identity. This was a country rising from revolutionary scars. Wide streets still whispered echoes of gunpowder and uncertain promises for the future. In this whirlwind walked Maria Teresa de Landa y de los Rios, an 18-year-old who stood out with elegance surpassing her time. She moved along sidewalks with regal posture and graceful steps that caught every gaze. Her clothes were impeccably tailored following Parisian trends, skirts barely brushing her calves, a bob haircut framing her sophisticated face. But she was more than just beauty. Intelligence sparkled in her lively eyes, a thirst for knowledge that led her to lose herself among books of literature and philosophy in downtown bookstores. Maria Teresa's presence in social circles was undeniable. She navigated these worlds with confidence, embodying the bold youth eager to shed old traditions. Observers saw in her the embodiment of a new era, a woman unafraid to explore cultural and fashion horizons fitting a Mexico striving to prove itself modern and cosmopolitan. In 1928, Maria Teresa's life, and perhaps the country's, changed forever. The first national beauty contest was announced, designed to showcase Mexico as a modern nation ready for the world stage. The lavishly decorated Iris Theater set the scene for a night destined to alter one young woman's path. Under dazzling lights from the ceiling, Maria Teresa walked confidently among contestants. Her tall figure, measured gestures, and radiant smile captured judges' attention and public admiration alike. When her name was called as Mexico's first Miss Mexico, thunderous applause filled the theater. The crown settled above her head like a halo of glory. A sash crossed her chest, marking her new status. Cameras flashed relentlessly, capturing each moment, while newspapers next day featured her on front pages, her image praised as Mexico's new face of grace, refinement, and progress. Soon she graced magazines and billboards. Her presence became essential at charity events and diplomatic receptions. Always composed, always elegant, people found in her figure a breath of hope, a vision of brighter days beyond war's shadows. She embodied both beauty and intellect, a beacon for a nation longing for renewal. Amid this national euphoria appeared General Moise Vidal Coro in Maria Teresa's social orbit. A man about 38 years old, his imposing presence commanded respect wherever he went. His uniform was always spotless, adorned with medals from a distinguished military career that radiated authority. Deep lines carved his serious face, the look of one used to command and discipline. He frequented the same circles as Maria Teresa, government receptions and high society events where power mingled with elegance. His reputation as a career soldier was impeccable. His name evoked stability and power, qualities highly prized in turbulent Mexico. Observers saw him as a pillar of institutional order, a man of iron principles whose word was law within his realm. What drew these two so different yet intertwined souls together? Could love truly bloom amid such rigid structures? Or were they destined to be pawns in a larger game where loyalty and passion collided? What secrets hid behind their polished facades? As dawn breaks over this city caught between past and future, we uncover layers of ambition, desire, and betrayal that threaten to consume them all. Are you ready to follow this story deeper into darkness? Tell me where you're listening from in the comments below. Stay close, there is much more beneath these shadows waiting to be revealed. The moment General Vidal's eyes locked onto Maria Teresa, something fierce ignited. His pursuit was relentless, a social dance played out under the watchful eyes of high society. Lavish floral arrangements arrived daily at the Landa residence, a constant reminder of his presence. At every event where Maria Teresa appeared, Vidal was there, an unwavering shadow. He seized every chance for brief exchanges, each word measured with formal respect that bordered on the theatrical. In crowded salons and glittering ballrooms, Vidal kept his distance but never took his gaze off her. His posture was always upright, voice deep and commanding, gestures deliberate. He projected the image of a man who could offer not just affection but a fortress of financial and social security. Whispers spread through the crowd about the general's persistence and the young woman's blossoming allure. Many saw them as a perfect match, youthful beauty meeting military steadfastness, a union blending future promise with present strength. Rumors claimed Vidal spoke with such eloquence that he promised certainty, a safe haven for Maria Teresa, who had been thrust suddenly into the spotlight. This courtship reached its peak in a wedding that captivated the nation's attention. The preparations were grandiose. Society eagerly anticipated every detail. The Church of San Francisco, nestled in the city's heart, became the stage for their union. Outside, a restless crowd gathered, straining to glimpse the couple everyone talked about. Inside, political figures, military officers, and social elites filled the pews. Maria Teresa walked down the aisle in a pure white gown, glowing beneath stained glass light. Her radiant face masked the solemn weight she carried in that moment. Vidal waited at the altar in full dress uniform, stern and resolute like a sentinel guarding a fortress. Their vows were whispered almost too softly to be heard over the crowd's murmur. The following reception overflowed with opulence. Music pulsed through ornate halls, crystal glasses chimed in celebratory toasts, laughter mingled with swirling gowns and sharp tuxedos. Newspapers hailed the wedding as a fairy tale come to life, a flawless merging of national beauty and honorable military prestige. But beneath this dazzling surface, some guests noticed something subtle, an unusual stillness in Vidal's hands during the jubilant celebration. A fleeting flicker in his eyes betrayed a complexity beyond joy. It vanished quickly but left an uneasy sense hanging in the air. A shadow seemed to hover quietly over the festivity, a whisper of secrets lurking behind perfect smiles. Behind the lavish spectacle binding Maria Teresa de Landa to General Moise Vidal lay another story, one far darker and more tangled than anyone suspected. Life in their elegant capital residence slipped into an illusion of normalcy after the wedding. Yet beneath this polished facade sprawled a web of deception meticulously woven over years. Vidal led two lives at once, a secret carefully guarded from public view but stretching from Mexico City all the way to Veracruz Gulf Coast. There, in a modest yet well-kept house by salty breezes and crashing waves, lived his first wife, Maria Teresa Arellano de Vidal. She was around 33 years old and had shared more years with Vidal than most imagined possible. She was mother to their two young daughters, who scampered through sunlit patios fragrant with sea air. Their household followed a quiet rhythm typical of military families, mornings bursting with children preparing for school, their innocent chatter piercing calm dawns. Maria Teresa Arellano managed domestic tasks with firm grace, overseeing cooks and nannies, and entertained other officers' wives during afternoon gatherings filled with talk of children's schooling and daily chores. To Veracruz community, she was simply Señora de Vidal, the respected general's wife and cornerstone of her small world. Meanwhile, General Vidal orchestrated his double existence with military precision, dividing time and resources between capital grandeur and coastal simplicity without missing a beat. His trips to Veracruz were frequent but cloaked in official duty. Secret meetings or inspections of remote barracks provided perfect cover stories. When leaving Mexico City's home, he packed his leather briefcase meticulously and gave vague instructions to Maria Teresa de Landa about his absence, the exact destination always left unexplained. He departed each time in his official car with a chauffeur waiting patiently outside, while days passed before his slow return, face unreadable yet stoic beneath carefully maintained composure. Can you imagine living alongside someone whose truth is split between two worlds? How long can such fragile balance hold before shattering? What drove Vidal to maintain this duality? Was it love? Ambition? Fear? The answers hid behind layers of protocol and silence, waiting for cracks to appear under pressure. Stay alert. What seems like stability might only be calm before an inevitable storm. Now picture Maria Teresa de Landa navigating this complex terrain, caught between public adoration and private uncertainty. How much did she suspect? Was she blinded by romance, or aware of shadows lurking just beyond her reach? These questions pull us deeper into a story where appearances deceive and every smile could mask hidden motives. What will happen when these parallel lives collide? The stakes are higher than they seem, and the next chapter promises revelations no one sees coming. The walls that once promised warmth now whispered cold secrets. Maria Teresa de Landa's world was shrinking fast, and the chains weren't obvious, but they were there. Gifts from General Vidal, discreet jewels and rare books, felt less like tokens of love and more like tools to mask his absences. Each present was a balm for her loneliness, a careful illusion of devotion. Yet, nothing in his demeanor hinted at guilt or a hidden life. But beneath the surface, a calculated plan was unfolding. Vidal's strategy centered on isolation. The home in Colonia Roma transformed from a place of love into a subtle prison. Information was tightly controlled. The first sign: newspapers stopped arriving regularly. At first they appeared later with missing pages. Soon, they vanished completely. Doña Rosario, the household maid, once left the newspapers folded on the breakfast table. Now she took them straight to Vidal's office. Under strict orders, he reviewed them alone before disposing of them, sometimes found crumpled in the trash or simply absent as if never delivered. Maria Teresa's daily ritual of reading news and discussing current events faded into confusion. She asked Rosario about the missing papers, her voice edged with irritation. Rosario, a woman in her 40s with slow movements and sharp eyes, shrugged with feigned ignorance or maybe genuine fear. Once, she murmured something about orders from the patron, lowering her gaze. When questioned, General Vidal offered vague excuses: distribution problems, uninteresting news for a young lady, or that politics were trivial matters not worth worrying about. His calm yet firm tone quelled superficial curiosity, but planted deep seeds of doubt in Maria Teresa's mind. Isolation didn't stop at newspapers. Vidal also controlled her reading material. Maria Teresa had brought her own collection of books, European and Mexican authors, essays and novels representing modern ideas and philosophies of their time. Yet Vidal disapproved of certain titles openly. He would pick up a book with a frown, flip through it briefly, then move it out of reach or take it to his office, never to return. Instead, he suggested books he deemed more suitable: classics, religious themes, or traditional romantic novels from trusted booksellers or his travels. At first, Maria Teresa complied, seeking his approval despite her passion for diverse literature. Her voracious reading slowed, pages went unturned, interest waned. She stared out windows more often than at words on paper. Doña Rosario noticed these moments, the young woman sitting silently with an open book in her lap for long stretches, her breath barely audible as a soft sigh escaped. The isolation extended beyond intellect. It became social exile. Vidal discouraged visits from Maria Teresa's family and friends. When her parents tried to see her often or siblings called by phone, a novelty itself in many homes, Vidal usually answered himself. He claimed Maria Teresa was unwell or busy with household duties. Invitations to social events were subtly declined under his justification of pressing commitments or desires for marital privacy. Maria Teresa accepted these reasons at first, but her once radiant smile dimmed into something forced, a social mask rather than genuine joy. Her strolls through Colonia Roma became infrequent and always accompanied by Vidal or their driver. Every movement was watched, greetings limited to brief polite exchanges. Inside the house, tension thickened like fog. Silk curtains once drawn back to welcome sunlight now hung half-closed, filtering daylight into soft shadows. Doors felt locked even when open, creating a tangible silence that pressed against every corner. Golden-framed mirrors reflected an eerie stillness, a house no longer alive with spontaneous noise but frozen in quiet oppression. The vibrant young woman who symbolized modernity and freedom now wandered halls that gleamed with luxury but felt like gilded cages. Her days blurred into restless pacing through salons or reorganizing dwindling book collections. Sometimes she sat on the balcony watching passers-by with eyes heavy with melancholy and longing. At times her fingers twitched rapidly over knitting needles, as if repetitive motion could soothe inner turmoil. As night fell, she moved to second-floor windows to part curtains slightly, and gaze at city lights flickering awake below. What thoughts ran through her mind during those silent moments? Did hope linger behind those tired eyes? Or had resignation settled deep inside? Can you imagine living each day under such invisible control? How long before invisible walls break a spirit? This quiet battle between control and resistance was far from over. The tension was suffocating, thickening the air like a storm about to break. Doña Rosario moved silently through the house, her footsteps barely making a sound on the plush carpets. She paused at the entrance, eyes locking onto something unusual, a folded newspaper damp with morning dew. It was the Democrat, a paper banned by General Vidal himself. Why was it here now? Her fingers hesitated over the rough edges of the paper, heart pounding with a mix of fear and curiosity. In the distance, the general's heavy footsteps echoed down the hall. Doña Rosario's breath caught as she glanced toward his closed office door, wondering if he had noticed the newspaper's sudden appearance. Without a word, she placed it carefully on the small table in the main room, right where Maria Teresa could see it. Maria Teresa's steps faltered as she passed by. Her delicate fingers brushed against the newspaper's surface, cool and foreign against her skin. Her mind raced. Was this an invitation? A secret message? Or a trap? For years, her world had been confined within these walls, wrapped in silence and shadows. Now, something was stirring beneath the surface. The house itself seemed to hold its breath. The sun slanted through silk curtains, casting long stripes of light that danced across polished wood floors. Dust motes floated lazily in the beams, undisturbed by the tension tightening every corner of this once vibrant home. Maria Teresa's eyes flicked repeatedly between the paper and the locked door of General Vidal's study. Her heart hammered as whispers of doubt crept in. Could this be her chance to break free from the invisible chains that bound her? Or would it only deepen the cage? She reached out again, fingers trembling, before pulling back as if burned. Outside, the city buzzed unknowingly under a heavy heat. The weight of that August Sunday pressed down like a physical force, mirroring the oppressive atmosphere inside. Maria Teresa couldn't shake a growing sense of dread mixed with hope, two forces colliding violently within her chest. Meanwhile, General Vidal sat alone in his study moments before, gripping his phone tightly after an urgent call. His voice had been harsh, laced with irritation and urgency. Veracruz, problems, discretion. The words echoed in his mind alongside mounting pressure he could no longer suppress. He ran a hand through his thinning hair and sighed deeply, a sound muffled behind thick wooden doors but sharp enough to cut through silence like a blade. His usual facade of control was crumbling. Every night grew heavier with secrets he could no longer contain. At dinner with Maria Teresa, his gestures betrayed him more than his words ever did. He fiddled nervously with utensils or drained wine glasses too quickly to mask the storm brewing inside him. She noticed but said nothing. Fear rooted her tongue. Doña Rosario watched quietly from afar, their silent observer trapped in this house of tension and unspoken truths. Her eyes often darted away when caught by Maria Teresa's gaze, as though hiding something more profound than mere obedience. As days passed, moments stretched unbearably long, each one pregnant with unsaid questions and fragile hopes. Maria Teresa wandered restlessly through empty halls, fingertips tracing familiar patterns on worn rugs or lingering on book spines that no longer held her interest. One small sound, a creak from a bed or a soft sigh, would suddenly pierce the quiet like thunder in an empty sky. It was impossible not to wonder what haunted each soul within those walls. What secrets did General Vidal carry so heavily? What awaited Maria Teresa beyond these suffocating rooms? Could Doña Rosario's cautious act of placing that forbidden newspaper spark change, or doom them all? You feel it too, don't you? That cold knot twisting tighter with every passing moment. Maria Teresa stood by the window now, watching shadows lengthen as afternoon melted into evening. The house whispered warnings, fragile walls trembling under invisible weight. Suddenly, footsteps approached quickly down the hall, sharp and determined. The general emerged from his study, face tight with tension and eyes fixed on the floor beneath him. His announcement shattered the fragile calm. An unexpected meeting was called. The lie they had all lived was unraveling fast, the illusion thinning dangerously close to exposing every hidden truth. As he left without looking back, Maria Teresa's breath caught in her throat. The air itself seemed charged with impending collapse, a castle built on sand ready to wash away with one final wave. Doña Rosario lingered near the doorway, watching silently as their carefully constructed world began to crack apart at its seams. The question hung heavy. How much longer could they keep pretending before reality tore everything apart? The heat outside intensified while shadows deepened inside, the perfect storm gathering both inside these walls and beyond them. Could Maria Teresa find strength to face what was coming? Could she reclaim her life from beneath this weight? Or would she be swallowed by secrets better left buried? The answer waited just beyond reach, as silent and dangerous as a breath held too long before release. She sensed the newspaper's presence before she saw it. A faint unease crept over her as her usually calm eyes flickered with surprise. Her trembling fingers brushed against the rough paper, unfolding it slowly. Her gaze darted across the columns, hunting for the familiar news section she had longed to read. Then, it struck her like a cold, sharp blow. The word bigamy screamed from the headline in bold, harsh letters. It was impossible to ignore. Beneath that damning word was the name of General Moise Vidal Coro, her husband. And right below his name, another name echoed through the room like a sinister ghost: Maria Teresa Errejón de Vidal. The other wife. The legitimate one. The accuser. The weight of the revelation pressed down on her like a stone slab. Her fingers clenched and crushed the paper, her body seized by an uncontrollable tremor. Eyes once filled with melancholic curiosity widened, as if trying to burn every letter into her retina, unable to look away. Her face, once radiant and full of life just a year before, drained of color until it resembled ash. A cold bead of sweat traced a path down her temple. She swallowed hard, choking on a surge of disgust and humiliation that clawed at her throat, but refused to escape as sound. The newspaper slipped from her grasp and fell softly onto the wooden floor where the headline continued its silent assault. Maria Teresa de Landa pressed a hand against her chest, clutching the fabric of her dress as if it could hold back the physical pain exploding inside her. Her breaths came shallow and erratic, each inhale a desperate gasp for air. A wave of dizziness swept over her, making the room spin wildly around her unsteady legs. Her eyes roamed across familiar objects suddenly alien, witnesses to the cruel lies she had lived within these walls. The subtle prison of her own home revealed itself plainly, a cage she had walked into willingly yet remained ignorant of its bars. The woman crowned Miss Mexico, the symbol of modernity and grace, was now its most helpless prisoner, exposed to public shame and disgrace. She collapsed into a nearby armchair, knees buckling under the unbearable burden of truth. The faint creak of wood barely pierced the rapid thump of her pounding heart. Her head tilted sideways, eyelids half closed as the world she once knew crumbled into an abyss of disbelief and despair. Tears streamed silently down her pale cheeks, hot and bitter, but no sob broke the crushing silence around her. At that exact moment, footsteps echoed sharply on the wooden floorboards. The general himself entered the room. His movements were steady and assured, his uniform flawless as always after a morning spent poring over military papers in his office. Seeing Maria Teresa de Landa's disheveled state and the newspaper lying discarded on the ground made him pause abruptly. His dark eyes flicked first to the headline, then to his wife's devastated face. A fleeting flash of alarm crossed his features but vanished quickly, replaced by irritation and disdain. Without picking up the paper or offering any comfort, he dismissed what lay before them with a sneer and a wave of his hand. "Don't pay attention to that," he said coldly. Maria Teresa. Those words were like a match thrown into dry tinder. Instead of quelling the storm raging within her, they shattered what little fragile sanity remained. Her eyes ignited with fierce rage, a searing blaze fueled by pain and humiliation too deep to contain any longer. Her body stiffened, muscles taut as though electric shocks coursed through every nerve ending. She rose abruptly from the chair, swaying slightly but determined not to fall again. Her hands clenched into fists so tight that nails dug painfully into palms. A guttural sob erupted from deep within, a raw sound carrying all the shame and betrayal she had endured in silence until now. She took a step toward him, face twisted with emotions too tangled for words, lips trembling in futile attempts to speak but failing utterly. The general's disdainful tone and dismissive attitude did not just belittle her suffering, they reduced her to an object of ridicule before a nation that had once crowned her queen. Her wild gaze shifted involuntarily toward the fireplace mantelpiece, where an old bronze clock stood beside something far more ominous: his Smith & Wesson .44 caliber revolver, a long-barreled weapon forged from dark, heavy metal he usually kept locked away in his office. That morning it lay there after his routine cleaning ritual, its cold gleam stark against the room's warm tones. Noticing where she looked, Vidal made a barely perceptible move forward, but it was too late. With unexpected speed born from desperation, Maria Teresa lunged toward the fireplace. Her trembling fingers closed tightly around the wooden handle of the revolver. She felt its chilling weight settle firmly in both hands. The barrel wavered erratically as instinct warred with reason, a wild impulse surging from unbearable pain and burning shame threatening to consume her entirely. The muzzle turned toward her own chest, aiming straight at where her heart beat erratically beneath thin fabric. Then came a piercing scream, not just hers but something primal escaping beyond human control. A strangled cry of desperation slipped from her lips. General Vidal's face, once proud and cold, twisted into sheer panic. Without hesitation, he lunged toward his wife. His arms shot out, desperate to stop her, to wrest the gun from her hands. Their bodies collided violently as they struggled fiercely. Then, in the chaos, 6 sharp shots cracked through the heavy silence. The brutal sound echoed off the walls, tearing through the quiet morning like a thunderclap. General Vidal's body jerked under the assault. A guttural groan burst from his throat, but was cut short instantly. He was thrown backward against a plush green velvet sofa. The fabric soaked up his weight but not his life. Blood welled rapidly from multiple wounds, dark and spreading like a sinister map across the cushion. His figure collapsed limp and motionless. 10 bullet holes marked his body, 6 entries and 4 exits, a ruthless testament to the savagery unleashed. The silence that followed was heavier than the gunfire itself, a dense, suffocating stillness that wrapped the room like a shroud. The metallic scent of burnt powder mingled with the sweet and sickly stench of fresh blood, hanging thick in the air. The heavy .44 caliber Midi West fell from Maria Teresa de Landa's trembling hands. It hit the wooden floor with a dull thud, before rolling beneath the sofa as if trying to escape the horror it had caused. Maria Teresa sank to her knees beside the sofa, her body trembling uncontrollably. Her glassy eyes locked onto General Vidal's lifeless form, his face frozen in a final expression of shock and disbelief. Warm blood spread fast over the velvet, soaking through with alarming speed. She reached out hesitantly, fingers brushing his cold skin and the soaked fabric beneath them. A sob escaped her throat, this time audible but still choked by disbelief. She wrapped her arms around her husband's inert body with a desperate strength, as though willing him back to life or clinging to her last tether in a collapsing world. Her once pristine dress stained with dark crimson, contrasting brutally against its white fabric, the symbol of Mexican beauty now soiled in tragedy. On her knees, tear-streaked and blood-speckled, she held tight to the man who had been both her tormentor and victim. Her mind spiraled into an abyss of indescribable pain, her shattered world reduced to this moment of fury and despair. An incoherent lament escaped her lips. "Moisés, Moisés," repeated endlessly in broken fragments of grief. The silence that followed those 6 violent shots was almost more terrifying than their sound. Thick, oppressive, yet fractured by Maria Teresa's muffled wails rising from the floor. The smell of burnt powder mixed with blood's sickly sweetness created an unreal atmosphere inside that doomed room. On her knees beside the sofa, Maria Teresa clung tightly to General Moisés Vidal's lifeless form. Her shaking hands trembled over parts of his uniform soaked in red. Her head rocked side to side against his chest as fragmented words slipped from quivering lips. "No, why? Forgive me." Her entire body convulsed with uncontrollable spasms, a physical manifestation of overwhelming emotional collapse. It was an unusual noise, the gunfire on that quiet Sunday morning in Colonia Roma, that alerted Doña Rosario Martinez, the family's longtime housekeeper. A woman around 40 with slow movements but sharp, observant eyes that often spoke more than words ever could. She had been peeling potatoes for lunch when the shots rang out abruptly. Her knife slipped from numb fingers and clattered hard against the cutting board. Her heart skipped wildly as she froze for a moment, breath caught tight in her chest while she listened carefully to the silence now reigning over the house. Slowly and cautiously, fear tightening her steps, she moved down the main hallway toward the living room. At its threshold, her gaze fell upon a scene that rooted her in place like stone. General Vidal sprawled across the sofa, once immaculate uniform now marred by a rapidly spreading dark crimson stain. At his feet knelt Maria Teresa de Landa, rocking gently over his corpse in silent sobs, visible only through trembling shoulders. Doña Rosario stood motionless, wide eyes frozen in horror while her body shook uncontrollably beneath mounting dread. A wave rising within that threatened to drown every ounce of strength she had left. Have you ever witnessed a moment so shattering it stops time itself? The kind where every breath feels borrowed and every second drags like an eternity. This was that moment for everyone in that house, the calm before chaos fully unleashed. As Maria Teresa whispered broken apologies into thin air, Doña Rosario's mind raced through what might come next. Would someone hear these cries? Could this nightmare be undone? Or was this just the beginning of something far darker? The air remained thick with tension, a fragile barrier between past horrors and looming unknowns that would soon spill forth without mercy or pause. What would you do if you found yourself trapped inside such a nightmare? Frozen between horror and helplessness while life crumbled around you? This tragic scene marked only a chapter in a story still unfolding. A story drenched in pain yet charged with questions begging for answers beyond sight or time. A cold chill swept down the hallway. The maid, shaking off her shock, gripped the doorframe as if it were her only anchor. A muffled sound escaped her lips, a mix between a gasp and a moan. She was the first eyewitness to a horror that had turned an elegant room into a grim stage of death and despair. Doña Rosario stood frozen in the doorway. Then, the front door opened softly. Rafael de Landa and Deborah de los Rios de Landa returned from Sunday Mass, accompanied by their children Angel and Lucia. Rafael, 55, stepped in first. His Sunday suit was immaculate, but his face showed calm typical of a peaceful morning. Behind him, Deborah, 50 years old with a firm posture and a hat framing her face, clutched her purse tightly. Angel, the eldest at 22, wore his best suit. Lucia, just 17, moved lightly with youthful curiosity, eyes scanning the room as they entered the hall. Suddenly, sounds from the main room stopped them cold. Maria Teresa's heart-wrenching sobs grew louder. Doña Rosario trembled faintly in the doorway. Alarm ran sharply through the family. Rafael's brow furrowed deeply. His serene expression vanished, replaced by worry. He stepped past Doña Rosario, gently pushing her aside as she offered no resistance. What greeted them hit like an electric shock. Rafael dropped his hat with a heavy thud. His eyes widened beyond belief at the sight of General Vidal's lifeless body on the sofa. Maria Teresa clung to him, Miss Mexico herself, her white dress soaked in spreading red. Deborah gasped silently, pressing a hand to her chest. Her lips quivered as tears welled up fiercely. A soft whimper escaped her throat. Angel dashed toward his sister, horror twisting his features. He tried to pull her away from the corpse, but Maria Teresa held on with desperate strength, every muscle taut with grief. Lucia froze at the threshold, hands covering her mouth. Her wide eyes locked onto the bloodstains as her body shook uncontrollably, speechless and stunned. The room spiraled into chaos. Maria Teresa's sobs merged with her mother's quiet wails and their father's silent anguish. Angel fought to stay composed, but finally managed to ease his sister off the floor. He sat her down gently while Doña Rosario approached with a trembling glass of water. Amid this storm of shock and despair, Rafael found a thread of control. His eyes still haunted but searching for action turned toward Angel. "Call the police now," he said in a hoarse yet steady voice. Angel nodded pale-faced and went to the phone near the entrance. His hands trembled as he dialed. Those next minutes stretched endlessly under suffocating tension. Maria Teresa remained seated on the floor, rocking slightly with vacant eyes staring far beyond reality. Deborah sat beside her, stroking her hair softly but receiving no response. Lucia stayed frozen too, watching everything with hollow eyes and tightly pressed lips. Then came the distant wail of sirens breaking Sunday's eerie silence in their neighborhood. Neighbors peeked out windows or stepped into yards, drawn by strange activity and unsettling noises at the Landa residence, curiosity mingled with concern flickering in their faces. A police cruiser screeched to a halt outside the house, followed by a larger vehicle from investigations. Officers jumped out quickly wearing dark trench coats and hats. Two men with visible badges led the group toward the door. Inside stood Rafael de Landa in the doorway again, his hand trembling as it pointed toward that dreadful living room scene without words. The officers stepped into what Doña Rosario had witnessed moments ago. General Vidal lying still on the sofa, blood spreading around him. Maria Teresa sitting on the floor with her stained dress. Scattered shell casings from a .44 caliber pistol beneath the sofa, within plain sight. No signs of struggle or forced entry appeared anywhere around them, only hints of an intimate tragedy unfolding behind closed doors. The agents trained for detachment maintained professional composure despite inner shock. One senior officer whispered commands. "Do not touch anything. Secure this area." Another cautiously approached General Vidal's body for examination without disturbing it, while one tried speaking softly to Maria Teresa. But she remained unresponsive, eyes lost in some distant torment and lips moving in inaudible murmurs. A patch of dried blood clung macabrely to her skin beneath part of that once pristine dress, a grim detail not missed by any present. More investigators arrived soon after, experts carrying toolkits for forensic work flooding into that tense air saturated now with metallic scent and quiet urgency. Have you ever felt time slow during moments you wish could freeze forever? Imagine standing there among these faces filled with shock that no words can mend, waiting for answers nobody wants but everyone desperately needs. As they worked meticulously through evidence and questioned those who could speak amid silence so heavy it crushed hope itself, the truth seemed just beyond reach, hidden behind layers of grief so raw it bled into every corner of that house now marked forever by tragedy. What secret lies did these walls keep? What shattered dreams hid beneath bloodstains? And above all, what would come next for this family torn apart before anyone could even breathe? Stay close, because what unfolds next will change everything they thought they knew. The night was far from over, but the truth was already casting long shadows. Every detail of the crime scene was meticulously recorded. Forensic experts moved with cold precision. They documented the body's position, bullet holes, the weapon's exact location. Bloodstains on the sofa and Maria Teresa's dress were carefully measured and photographed. Each object received a numbered tag, as if to freeze this nightmare in time. Meanwhile, the Landa family was taken aside for questioning. Angel de Landa sat pale and trembling, his voice barely held together as he described calling the police. Lucia de Landa stared blankly at the closed door where tragedy unfolded. Her shock rendered her nearly speechless. Doña Rosario gripped a handkerchief tightly, her words choked by emotion as she recounted what she saw when entering the room. Outside, police activity pulsed like a heartbeat under the darkening sky. Patrol car lights flickered against garden walls, throwing ghostly shadows. Curious neighbors gathered across the street, whispering and pointing at the illuminated house. Inside, Maria Teresa was lifted gently off the floor by an officer who held her arm with mechanical care. Her movements were empty, her gaze lost in a fog of trauma. She was taken to a ground-floor room where a female officer offered tea and comfort. But Maria Teresa remained silent, eyes fixed on the wall as if trapped in another world. The morning brought no relief. News of the murder exploded across Mexico City like wildfire. Newspapers rolled off presses with headlines screaming scandal. Miss Mexico murders husband, tragedy in high society, bigamy exposed, bloody end. What had once been a symbol of beauty and grace became a public spectacle of horror overnight. The press that had crowned her now stripped away her dignity piece by piece. Photographs from happier days clashed with grim crime scene images. Reporters speculated wildly. Was it passion or betrayal? Was this a crime of love gone wrong, or something darker? The nation divided sharply. Some saw Maria Teresa as a betrayed victim pushed to her limits. Others branded her immoral, a woman undone by base instincts. What do you think? Was she a broken soul or a calculating killer? The truth seemed tangled in shadows as rumors swirled. In the early dawn hours, Maria Teresa was led out of her home. Her face was pale and hollow, as if she were watching someone else live through this nightmare. She wore a dark coat that tried, and failed, to hide bloodstains on her undergarments. Her hands were cuffed beneath long sleeves, concealing them from view. A police car waited outside amid flashes from cameras alerted by a tip-off. Photographers swarmed like vultures, their blinding lights capturing every fragile moment of defeat etched on her face and in her vacant eyes. This image would be seared into public memory forever. The vehicle roared away toward Belén prison on the city's west side. Behind those stone walls awaited a new chapter, a chapter of confinement, public trial, and social condemnation that no verdict could fully erase. Maria Teresa de Landa, the epitome of modern beauty and elegance, had become the tragic heroine of a melodrama shaking Mexican society to its core. From that moment on, Mexico plunged into media frenzy lasting months without respite. Sensational headlines dominated newspapers relentlessly. The story of Miss Mexico turned murderer became omnipresent chatter in cafes, markets, trams, everywhere. This trial wasn't just about guilt or innocence anymore. It was an arena for battling deeper cultural values amid national transformation. For the first time in Mexican legal history, court proceedings were broadcast live on radio, bringing justice's voice directly into homes and public squares alike. Electronics shops and small cafes filled with eager crowds huddled around radios, listening intently with reverence to every word, every testimony, every heated argument. The tension was palpable. Pauses in the broadcast sparked murmurs and passionate debates among listeners, trying to grasp what justice meant in this case. Maria Teresa's defense rested in the hands of José María Lozano, a charismatic legal titan known as the Prince of Speech. At 50 years old, Lozano wielded legendary oratory skills that enthralled audiences and manipulated emotions with surgical precision. His presence at court was an event itself. His deep melodic voice echoed through chambers while his measured gestures held everyone spellbound. From day one, Lozano appeared as justice's champion for this young woman facing overwhelming odds, a beacon promising hope amidst despair. But how far could eloquence go against public outrage? Could words alone rewrite this dark story? As the courtroom drama unfolded live before an entire nation hanging on every syllable, one question loomed larger than all. Would truth survive this trial unscathed? Listen closely now. The answers are still being written behind those stone walls. The courtroom held its breath as the defense launched a masterstroke that would change everything. Maria Teresa de Landa was no cold-blooded killer, but a victim, a young, naive woman trapped by a corrupt man's manipulation. José María Lozano painted her story with heartbreaking detail. Before meeting General Vidal, she was a promising youth, a lover of literature, crowned Miss Mexico, embodying purity and hope. Each word elevated her image from accused murderer to tragic martyr. Lozano described the general's control like a sinister shadow over her life. Newspapers banned, reading materials censored, family and friends kept at bay. The once warm home in Colonia Roma had become a gilded prison, a stage for psychological torment. Witnesses handpicked by the defense reinforced this picture. Doña Rosario, the trembling housekeeper, recounted the crime scene, the despair in Maria Teresa's sobs and cries that no one could understand. Her parents, Rafael and Deborah de Landa, wept openly as they spoke of their daughter's transformation. The joy in her eyes vanished. Restlessness haunted her every move. Angel, her brother, told of the general's strange absences and how hard it was to reach Maria Teresa. The family was unraveling under pressure. Lozano's voice rose as he retold the moment the truth crashed down on Maria Teresa when she discovered Vidal's bigamy. He dramatized the newspaper headline with sharp intensity: shock, panic, emotional collapse. The humiliation of being exposed as an ignorant mistress shattered her world. His tone shifted between outrage and sorrow, making the courtroom feel every pang of her heartbreak. He argued fiercely that this was no cold-blooded murder but an act born of temporary madness, a desperate outburst fueled by pain and betrayal. Maria Teresa had first aimed the gun at herself, trying to escape suffering. The shots that followed happened during a frantic struggle when Vidal tried to stop her, an accident born from his recklessness. Every word struck a chord, stirring murmurs of sympathy among the crowd and radio listeners alike. People saw their own fears reflected in Maria Teresa's story, the vulnerability behind her crown. But the prosecution fought back with icy resolve. The prosecutor's voice was flat, but sharp with legal precision. He painted Maria Teresa as a symbol of moral decay, a flapper who defied convention with swimsuit contests and liberal readings. To him, she was no innocent victim but a rebellious woman capable of violence. He insisted she knew about Vidal's other marriage when she wed him. This wasn't madness, it was murder planned to remove an obstacle, the general himself. Citing the number of shots fired, their accuracy, and the gun found in the house, he built his case for premeditation. Yet his arguments clashed against the defense's emotional narrative. The image of Maria Teresa as a victim had already taken root in public consciousness. Months passed before Judgment Day arrived, December 1st, 1929, a day heavy with anticipation. The courtroom overflowed, tension thickened the air. Outside, thousands gathered around radios spread across the city streets. After long deliberation, the jury spoke through their foreman. The word, acquittal, echoed sharply in stunned silence before erupting into cheers inside and out. Maria Teresa de Landa was declared not guilty of homicide by unanimous decision. Tears flowed freely, not from grief but relief, for her family and supporters alike. This verdict marked a milestone in Mexican justice history, one of the last major trials using popular juries before that system was abolished, perhaps influenced by the emotional storm this case unleashed. In the aftermath, Maria Teresa vanished from public view as quickly as she had appeared under its glare. The press lights dimmed, headlines dropped away until only dusty court records preserved her name. She rebuilt her life far from beauty pageants and social events, instead diving deep into academia with fierce determination few expected. Enrolling at UNAM, the very university where her love for literature and philosophy began, she pursued knowledge relentlessly. Her hard work paid off with a doctorate. Soon she was known not for scandal but for scholarship. As a respected professor, Maria Teresa became synonymous with books and teaching rather than tragedy or glamour. But what drove this transformation? Was it simply survival? Or something more profound, a quest for redemption or peace? Can someone truly escape their past when it is etched so deeply into public memory? And what shadows linger behind those quiet classroom walls? The story is far from over. The walls of that house in Colonia Roma refused to forget. They held tight to the echoes of a violent past, whispering secrets no one dared to silence. At night, when the city slept and shadows stretched long, strange sounds broke the stillness. The snap of breaking branches pierced the darkness. Then 6 sharp, chilling gunshots rang out, bouncing off empty halls as if replaying a nightmare trapped in time. Who was watching from the second-floor window? Neighbors swore they saw a figure standing still, a man in military uniform, shoulders squared, face stern. He gazed down the street like a silent guardian, forever on patrol. His presence was cold and fleeting, but unmistakable. In the dead hours, others heard dragging footsteps echoing through the corridors, slow, heavy, relentless, an ominous rhythm marking the passage of a restless soul. The most haunting sight was of a pale young woman drifting through the main room. Her eyes carried a sorrow so deep it seemed to swallow light itself. Her dress shimmered ghostly white, but bore dark stains at the chest, as though stained by an invisible wound. Her hands hovered as if clutching something lost, holding tight to the lifeless body of Moises Vidal, forever tethered to that tragic day. This was no ordinary haunting. It was a wound left open in time's fabric, bleeding memory and pain into the present. Mexico tried to bury these stories beneath yellowed newspapers and forgotten files, but the house remembered everything. The sound of those 6 shots never truly faded. They lived inside the walls like a curse. What happens when justice closes its doors, but truth refuses to leave? The crime was more than legal verdicts or public spectacle. It was an imprint on reality itself. Maria Teresa de Landa, Miss Mexico 1928, had faced humiliation and betrayal that day. In desperation, she took control with a gunshot that shattered illusions and changed her fate forever. The trial that followed captivated an entire nation. Televised for all to see, it became more than a courtroom drama. It was a battle between sympathy and scandal. The jury listened not just to facts, but to the silent cries of a woman wronged. When she walked free, it was on a wave of public outcry, a rare victory against injustice. Yet Maria Teresa vanished from the spotlight afterward, retreating into academia where she taught philosophy, literature, and history for decades. Her voice, once filled with passion, now calmly explained Kant's complexities or Sor Juana's poetry to students unaware of her stormy past. She lived quietly until 1992 when she passed away, carrying her secrets and ghosts with her. But those ghosts remained behind in that house on Colonia Roma. New tenants and neighbors began sharing eerie stories, unexplained noises, spectral figures appearing without warning. The place had become a vessel for memories too painful to fade. How would you feel knowing your home holds echoes of such tragedy? Would you dare walk past at night? The line between history and haunting blurred there, each shadow telling part of a story never fully told. Some say beauty blinds us, power corrupts, lies eventually devour their creators. Maria Teresa's shooting was not just an act of violence, it was a desperate rewrite of her story carved into blood and silence. The law absolved her, but some truths do not rest with verdicts. They linger in spaces where pain once broke free. This is not just a tale from dusty archives. It is a living reminder that some wounds run deeper than time can heal. It asks us, what is justice beyond courts? How do we reckon with secrets that refuse peace? Your thoughts echo through this tale now. Do you believe justice was served? Can past horrors ever truly fade from our present lives? Share your voice in the comments below if this story stirred something deep inside you. And if these shadows grip your curiosity, dive into another mystery lurking within our country's history here on Anatomy of Fear. Don't forget to hit like if this uncovered chapter moved you, and subscribe for more voices whispering from darkness. Until next time, remember, some stories never sleep. They wait patiently for us to listen again.